Hello and welcome! This is an introduction to scientific notation. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, well, what is scientific notation? It is a way of writing large numbers easily. So for example, I'm going to talk about negative 1.23 times 10 to the 3. Let's just keep in mind that this is really negative 1.323 times 10 times 10 times 10. Okay, an important thing to keep in mind is this 1 in front. The number in front of the decimal needs to be somewhere between 9 and 1. Okay, so that means no zeros, and that also means no double digits, so nothing over no 10 or higher. That value must be between 1 and 9. It's an important thing to keep in mind as we're going forward. Now the negative in front is called the sign. If it's a positive, we just don't write it. The 1.23 is termed the significand, or the decimal, or the digit, or my personal favorite, the mantissa, or the one that we'll use all the time, coefficient. The 10 to the third is the exponential term. The base is the 10, and the exponent, or power, which is the term we're going to use in class, is 3. So we're saying that is 10 multiplied 3 times. So the first thing that you need to be able to do is to put a number into scientific notation. And when we're talking about this, we're going to be talking about two things. The coefficient, okay, so this number here, and the power. So any number that's written in fixed decimal notation, okay, come on computer, why aren't you working, is going to be times 10 to the 0, okay, because you haven't multiplied by 10 or divided by 10 yet, okay? Then we need to figure out what we're going to do to our coefficient. We are going to increase the size of our coefficient, which means we're going to need to decrease the size of our power. We're going to move the decimal place 5 places to make this number 3.45. Now notice that the 3 has to be between 1 and 9. Remember that first digit has to always be between 1 and 9. And since I moved 5 digits to the right, this is going to be times 10 to the negative 5. I've made this bigger, so that has to be smaller, hence the negative sign. Now, what about if you need to take a number out of scientific notation? So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to take this number, negative 6.4 times 10 to the 5, and move it to times 10 to the 0, which means the power is going to go down so that the coefficient needs to get larger in magnitude. Okay, so I'm going to move to the right. So don't forget the negative. So here's my 6.4. I'm just going to add a bunch of zeros. I don't know how many for sure. And then I'm going to move it to the right 5 decimal places. Okay, so this is 6400000. Don't forget the negative. Very important not to change the sign of your numbers. Now notice that I did not put a decimal place. Okay, when you add zeros to go into fixed decimal notation, those zeros are not significant. Alright, now, if I want to, scientific notation is great because you can do very simple calculations in scientific notation. Okay, the more difficult is to add or subtract in exponential notation. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is rewrite each number so that all the coefficients are multiplied by the same power of 10. Okay, so convert the highest power of 10 being added or subtracted as suggested. So 4.2 times 10 to the 4th is the largest power of 10. So we're going to leave that as 4.2 times 10 to the 4th. Now 10 to the 3, we need to increase the size of the power by 1, so we need to decrease the size of the coefficient by 1 order of magnitude. So that's going to be 0.79 times 10 to the 4th. Then I add as normal 4.99 times 10 to the 4th. Okay, and then I just need to make sure that the coefficient is between 1 and 10. Okay, now if you're going to multiply and divide using scientific notation, which we will use a lot in class, there are a couple things you have to keep in mind. When you multiply exponentials, you add the exponents and multiply the coefficients. Dividing is just the opposite. You subtract the exponents and divide the coefficients. And when you take the reciprocal of an exponent, you have to change the sign. We went over that in class. And when fractions include several terms, it may help to simplify the top and bottom separately than divide. So here I have 4 times 10 to the 4th times 7 times 10 to the 3. So I'm going to multiply the coefficients, 4 times 7, and I'm going to add the exponents. So times 10 times to the 4 plus 3. Okay, so I'm adding the powers, and I'm multiplying the coefficients. Okay, now 4 times 7 is 28. So 28 times 10 to the 4 plus 3, which is 7. Now the 28 is not in correct scientific notation, so I'm going to need to adjust that. So I have to move and make that a smaller number, which means the power has to go up. So it's 2.8 times 10 to the 8. And that is a simple calculation using multiplication. Now here's a sample division problem. 3.5 times 10 to the 7th divided by 7 times 10 to the minus 2. Now remember, with division, you're going to subtract the powers and divide the coefficients. Okay, so this is going to be 3.5 divided by 7, so that's the coefficients, times 10 to the 7 minus a negative 2. Okay, so this is 0.5 times 10 to the 9th, okay, but I still have to fix this number. So this is going to be 5 times 10 to some power, okay. I made this number larger, the coefficient larger, so the power has to get smaller, so that's 10 to the 8th. And that is how you do scientific notation.